So we've heard a lot about artificial intelligence today, so I hope you're ready for some organic stupidity from me. Anyway, call this organic if you want, but I think the TLDR version of this talk is essentially that when you launch or relaunch a paper, you're on a search for your soul as a journalistic project, right? So for those of you who don't know, the Buenos Aires Herald was founded in 1876, which for the mathematically minded of you means we're going to be turning 150 next year. And it was founded as like a shipping bulletin by British immigrants who were living in the, near the port of Buenos Aires. But it really became famous because it was the only newspaper that was really telling every day the stories of the disappeared, the stories of the human rights abuses that were happening during the last dictatorship. And then in 2017, a mixture of factors, including changing media landscapes and whatnot, meant that the paper was shut down for a while. However, it was down, but not out. Aguante Shakira. Right, so in 2022, end of 2022, 6 of us started to meet up on a project to relaunch the Herald. And to do that, we were all super excited, but we also had to deal with some really important challenges that I think a lot of media are probably going to be familiar with nowadays. One of those was the print first to digital shift, because like the end of a sci-fi series, we no longer exist in physical form, basically, which means that we have audiences all over the world, whereas perhaps before it was read by like a close-knit group of people who would actually buy it in person. News consumption habits have obviously changed a lot as well. So, gone are the days when you would sit at for most people, gone are the days where you sit with a print newspaper in the breakfast table. And so we had to think about how we were going to adapt the project to those needs. So obviously this posed a bunch of challenges for us. The first of which, and probably the most important of which, was a question of finding our voice, finding our style, how we were going to write. The question of, did it make the most sense to write in British English, or maybe to speak in a more American English tone? And also, how did we deal with Argentine challenges? The interpreters are going to kill me for this, but things like si fascismo, el gordo cine, las Malvinas, how did we talk about all that kind of stuff, right? We also had to dive right back into the news agenda. We had to develop a bunch of sources. And perhaps the biggest challenge was figuring out essentially what our identity was as a publication. So what stories work for us, what stories don't work for us, who our audiences are, and how we can put the two of them together. When it comes to our audience, around 1/5 of them are in Argentina and the rest are actually abroad. The single largest country is the US. We also know that we have a couple of different kinds of reader profile. It's not just one kind of reader, right? So we have the diplomat, the exchange student, the learner of English, the researcher, and all sorts. But basically, there's nothing like getting out and into the community to understand your readers. And so we've held a bunch of events, which was a great way of finding out that our readers don't bite. And what have we learned? Well, I think that, as I said at the start of this chat, the most important thing is to get to the soul of the paper. So, you can't use the same wording, you can't assume the same kind of arc of familiarity that you would with local readers on an Argentine paper. So it's very much not just a translated Argentine newspaper, because, many stories that would work for local media are just going to fall flat for us. You also can't write like a parachute correspondent who is maybe going to cover Argentina just once or twice a year. As a deputy director, I have to think really closely about my identity as an immigrant who speaks English and lives in Argentina, and what I didn't understand when I arrived here, and what's falling through the cracks. So I think trying to get the outside world to understand why Milei's government seems to be struggling economically now, when everything seemed to be peachy until quite recently, is a really strong example of that. We've learned a huge amount about what, the readers are super confused about the economy, right? Probably understandably. They really want to understand the Milei government, but they also have specific interests like understanding immigration law, understanding certain aspects of learning English. And so I think that just brings us to the fact that more than all, they want damn good journalism, and they want a publication that has its own unique DNA and identity, and that's where the Herald comes in. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to chat to me about it later, I'll be hanging around.